It's the Brandon Cruz Daily Fantasy Podcast, where I look at loan plays and strategies specifically designed for GPPs. This is a show for people who are already informed on daily fantasy sports and how these contests operate. If you have any questions related to NASCAR, isn't a stupid question, feel free to shoot them my way, BrandonCruzDFS on Twitter, or leave it in the comment section below. Remember, take everything you hear with a grain of salt and use your best judgment when making entries. Additionally, if you have a gambling addiction, that is just not my problem. Check your sense of feelings at the door. Let's get right into it. We're talking about Las Vegas for the Cup Series. Before we get into that, little housekeeping. Start of the month here. You can support me on Patreon. My full NASCAR coverage covers all three series, all three series, $18.99 a month. You get my full driver projections, everything that I use to make my own lineups. Driver projections, a heat map breaking down how I use each driver, what I think they're going to do, projections, things of that nature, cores, my favorite plays on certain sites, my Discord, where I'm in there up until lock for all three series. So if you want to ask me questions, if you want to see what I'm thinking, after our live shows or after I listen to other people, hit me up right there. You can support me. You can also donate and just support me here. You don't really get anything. You're just helping me out and keeping food on the table. $3 here, $1 here. I appreciate anything you can give. Now let's talk about Las Vegas. And it has he has the pick. He's finally giving out the picks. Oh my God, Brandon, you're giving out the picks. Well, as you can tell, looking at the length of this video, it's going to be like 40, 50 minutes most likely. Put this on 2x, 3x if you have that widget, and let's dig right into it. I've tried to record this a couple times, and I just end up ranting forever, so hopefully I can just get this through without ranting for half an hour again. The Cup Series is the most difficult series in NASCAR to project. The only reason everybody wants to talk about it, and the only reason everybody really cares about it, is because the prize pools are bigger here. I would highly advise you to play NASCAR Xfinity DFS, NASCAR Truck Series DFS. That's what I put way more money into. That's what I put way more time into, because I think that's easier. Not necessarily the contests, because people know what they're doing there, but you have smaller contests and you know who's going to perform. You know who's going to show up and be fast. There's good cars, mid-tier cars, and there's bad cars in those series. The Cup Series, especially with where we're at right now with no practice, certain teams catching up after not really knowing how to arrive to a track without practice. We have all this stuff showing up now, and last week was a great example. Look, we don't know who's going to be fast off the trailer, okay? Nothing pointed to Chris Buescher being that fast off the trailer. Now, granted, what helped him was that he was trimmed out perfectly for that track right off the bat, so he was able to take early track position. He was able to get to the lead. The only guy who was really racing was Brad Keselowski, and he got around him just because he had a better car. He ended up staying out. Nobody could pass him. That's how he led those fast laps, and that's how he got those laps led early in the race. Then once you hit halfway, he kind of fell off a cliff, but he already got the laps led and everything, and it solidified him into the optimal lineup with his price. So, entering Las Vegas, there's a lot of unknowns as always. We can look at lap data. That's what I'm going to look at. But we don't know without practice what these teams have. Everybody needs to understand that. So, I saw a lot of people in the industry getting shit on, across the sites, across content creators. And I'm not trying to be a white knight for this industry. I'm certainly not trying to do that or anything, but we're going off of what we think is going to happen here. I started this stuff to have an archive of my own opinion on here, and people just happen to like what I was saying. That's why I'm here. That's why I get support this year on Patreon, on PayPal, everything like that. People like to see where I'm going, and I tend to make stands. I tend to try and make my stands really clear, so I'm not leaving, like an ambiguous, thought or who is he liking or whatnot. So I try and really pin down certain guys. But yeah, the Cup Series is really difficult. I landed on some guys last week that were really great. Byron Bowman, I had a lot of those guys. I had a lot of Chase Elliott too. I had a lot of Martin Truex Jr. as well, So when you're looking at the Cup Series, there's a lot of unknowns. And I'm trying to really determine what the player pool is that a vast majority of casuals or a vast majority of people are going to use. And especially right now when we have so many unknowns, I like to get off the chalk. I know you're like, Brandon, you're crazy, man. You're bringing up Derek Cope at the 500, and then you're talking about fading Reddick at Homestead, and then you're talking about fading Hamlin last week. And I take stands. I'm hoping to get ownership leverage, and hopefully guys don't project well or they don't do well, and I'm not on them, and I'm on people who do well. It's kind of how I survived on FanDuel last week. FanDuel carried me across, DraftKings and Super Draft. So I had a very good week on FanDuel. I think all my lineups cashed there just because I was so heavy on Byron and Bowman. So I'm going to approach this video in two different ways. And obviously we still have, my summary, and I'm going to go over, the actual things here. But I'm trying to imagine how casual players play. And since I watch everything on YouTube, I watch the good shows and I watch the bad shows. The quality of content is certainly everywhere on YouTube. One thing I can't stand is people either on their phone or on the DraftKings website looking through the game logs. That doesn't tell me anything. Sure, you can get to the same picks, but I want in-depth analysis. I want in-depth detail. I'm the show that I didn't find, 3-4 years ago. I look at things that I find interesting that I didn't see other people talking about. So I'm going to very quickly try to imagine the player pool that a lot of people are going to go with and explain why I think that is. And then we're going to talk about the guys that I like here. And why am I talking so much about this? Because typically twice or 3 times a year, I have to go through this because people don't listen to the first 10 seconds of this video. This is GPP talk only. This is tournament talk only. I don't care. I do not play cash. I think cash is almost harder to do well because everybody plays the same guys. And, I'm not here to just be like, oh, this guy's a good play. This guy's a dominator, blah, blah, blah. I'm trying to find details to play other guys. So with that out of the way, let's talk about the 3 pools that I think a lot of people are going to use. And I'm going to try and imagine how they're going to get to it. So these are the picks. If you want the picks, these are the picks. And then we'll go into my actual summary of who I think is going to be good this week. So let me get into rhythm here as we're 7 minutes into this video. All right. Kevin Harvick starting in pole. He's $9,700. He's so good at these tracks. You got to play him. Kevin Harvick, chalk. Everyone. He's stupid cheap. He's starting on the pole. What's going to go wrong with Harvick? You got to play him. Forget Byron. Forget Larson. We got to just focus on Kevin Harvick. What about Truex? Well, maybe he'll lead laps. Maybe they'll be the 2 dominators. They're priced off very well. Truex is 11-1. His price shows that he's going to dominate as well. So maybe if you throw, a $97 Kevin Harvick and a $11,100 Truex Jr. in your lineup, you'll be good to go. Or maybe if you want to pivot off of Truex, you can go to Hamlin. He was fine. He started the pole last week. Although he started in the back, he was able to go through the field and everything like that. Kurt Busch, he won last time we were here. You got to look at track history. So Kurt Busch won the last race here. He's going to be great. Chase Elliott's been great at these 1.5 miles last year. He's going to be good here. Track history for Brad Keselowski's going to make him a play. You got to play Brad Keselowski. He was early. He was good early in the Homestead race. 10-3, you got to play him as well. And then Tyler Reddick, obviously he had the best car last week. You got to play him. The homeboy, the other brother from the same mother, Kyle Busch, starting 14th. You got to play him because Kyle Busch is 11-4. He's the highest on DraftKings. That means he's a great play. DraftKings is going to force us to play him. And then you get to Joey Logano, $10,000. Track history, people. You got to look at track history. Christopher Bell won a race earlier this year. He's fast. Chris Buescher dominated last week. You got to play him again. He's too cheap. Starting 18th, he's going to dominate again. Ross Chastain in the old Kyle Larson car. Kyle Larson was all right here. You got to play Ross Chastain here. Chase Briscoe's SHR equipment. Harvick's going to do well. You got to play Chase Briscoe. Ryan Blaney. Oh my God, 10-8. Look at his track history. Look at these. Look at the races that he's dominated. This is a Ryan Blaney race. Oh my gosh. And then you're going to go to Anthony Alfredo. He's the value play of the week. Oh my God. $5,600 for Anthony Alfredo. And then, Eric Almirola, Erik Jones, these guys are going to be great. Oh my God, Matt DiBenedetto is going to be a smash play this week. Did you guys see how well he did last time we were here in the fall? He almost won this race. You got to play Matt DiBenedetto. That is what I try to do in my mind each and every week to determine chalk, to determine how I think people are going to approach races where they're looking heavily at lap history. And the reason I have 3 of these charts here is because this is where I'm trying to be. Well, if this is the picks, maybe the condensed picks are these guys. Maybe the condenser picks are the guys over here. And I throw Joey Gaze in here because we're going to talk about him as well, especially with the BJ McLeod nonsense last week. But this is how I go in and try and predict ownership right now, because you can't predict ownership right now. This is uncharted territory for NASCAR DFS. As I said in the past 3 weeks, this is a completely different animal than we've ever been. You got to throw out rules. You got to throw out perceptions that you have gone into previous years thinking, or certain ideas or certain philosophies and everything like that. So now that we went over the picks, I mean, this is, in my mind, I would say this is the player pool that a good portion of people are going to play, and I think I'm going to go in a much different direction here. So that's why I have the picks here, because I think these are the picks across everything, across most content. And I'm not making fun of anybody specifically. I'm just trying to really think about how people are going to make lineups. And I'm recording this, Wednesday right after prices have come out. So I haven't seen anybody yet. So I'm not making fun of anybody because I have not seen any content. I haven't read anything. I'm recording this directly after prices have come out, and I've messed around with lineups to see where everything lines up. So now that we're here and looking at my summary, let's talk about the Las Vegas Cup race here now that I've wasted 10 minutes. So thank you. If you're sticking around, thank you very much. Hopefully I've entertained you so far. Starting the poll, Kevin Harvick. He's going to be very, very chalky. I can already see people talk about Chalk City Kevin Harvick, $9,700. Now, I didn't mention this in the Cup Series video last week, and I got a lot of views on that video, so I don't think a lot of people heard it in the Xfinity or the Truck Series. But the pricing that DraftKings had last week for Logano and Hamlin, I know Hamlin went to the back, but the pricing that they had for those two drivers were reflective of the fact that even DraftKings doesn't see the pole sitter as that dominating factor anymore without practice, or without Q being set from qualifying. DraftKings doesn't know if they're going to be the fastest. If they projected Kevin Harvick, if they projected Joey Logano, if they projected Denny Hamlin last week to, not Kevin Harvick last week, but if they projected the pole sitter last week to, lead a good portion of the race, to dominate, he would have been priced way higher. This is the exact same situation. Kevin Harvick is $9,700. Now, he has ran extremely well at these tracks. If you look, and I've even added onto the graph from last week talking about the Homestead situation here, so we can see how all the drivers, how I think they were in terms of what their car was the last 4 races of last year, and then Homestead here, you can kind of see their averages. This is just a basic average. I'm not getting a race rating. I'm not getting a lap thing. This is just where in my mind I think these drivers were. And you can see right here that Harvick, I think he had the 3rd best at Darlington 3, 6th best at Las Vegas 2 last year, 2nd best at Kansas 2, and probably the 2nd best car at Texas. But we don't know about Texas because obviously he ran into the wall. But that's just where I'm putting him. So if Kevin Harvick is going to be, and I think we can very easily see Harvick getting 35-40% ownership, because I think projections are going to be sky high, rocket high on Kevin Harvick. And we saw this exact same thing last year multiple times where the pole sitter was in a perfect situation. It was a perfect driver projected to lead, 125 laps, and it didn't work out. And that's on tracks to where you're not going to see restarts this crazy. The reason I'm not looking at track history from last year is because both races last year they had cautions towards the end of the race that mixed up the running order. So we had a lot of guys getting waiver rounds. We had a lot of guys that were trapped a lap down without a caution coming out. A caution comes out. They, instead of pitting, take the waiver round. So they're on the lead lap, but they're on old tires. Then you have, shenanigans up front of people taking 4 tires, people staying out on old tires, people taking 2 tires. And we've already talked about how restarts and pit road determine how races go. And that's at other tracks, unlike Vegas. We're going to see guys entering turn 1 at Las Vegas 4-5 wide, because this is such a one groove racetrack with this package that is just god awful, disgusting in NASCAR. These guys can't pass anyone. When you're in a long run, you're going to get dirty air from the cars in front of you. You can't pass people. So the only time drivers have a chance to improve their position is on restarts. We might not see it at the initial start. We might not see it at the end of stage 1 or in stage 2, but I guarantee you when we get late in the race and when we have a late race yellow, because we always have a late race yellow at Vegas, it's either a fuel mileage race or we have a late race yellow. That's all it ever comes down to. We're going to see drivers who weren't up front finish well, and we're going to see guys who were up front most of the race finish poorly because they were forced 3 wide, they were stuck on the top, they didn't get the push on the restart, they weren't in the preferred line, and not even preferred line inside outside, just whoever gets more aggressive, whatever line gets more aggressive, whatever person gets more push off the initial restart. So that is why I have Kevin Harvick as a C in my rankings, because I am very close to almost always fading the pole sitter this year. And obviously last week it worked out great. I didn't even have to change anything when Hamlin went to the back because I was not on Hamlin. I was not on Logano. I didn't think they would do well. I may have had one lineup with Logano, but I certainly did not have any real ownership on the guys up front. I don't think I'm going to have any real ownership on Harvick. Maybe a lineup in case I'm missing out, or like in case I'm nervous I'm missing out on him leading, but I don't think he's going to lead laps, and I don't think Harvick leads the first lap. I really don't. I see Larson getting around him. I see Truex getting around Byron. I see chaos happening, at least in the first two rows. I see Harvick not arriving off the trailer with the best car. Byron and Hendrick Motorsports have been extremely consistent and extremely fast across the board at every type of track. Recently, at the end of last year, obviously at Homestead, they were fast here. Harvick, we could run the same situation. He's never really been great at Homestead. Obviously, he won the championship there, but Homestead has never been Harvick's best track. But if we run into a situation again where Stewart-Haas in general arrived at the track with the wrong setup, with the wrong type of car, that's going to be disastrous for any type of, dominating performance that Harvick has projected. So I'm probably going to fade Harvick, and I'm going to tell you the guys that I really like behind him. I don't like Byron as well. I know he started on the outside. He won last week, and I had a lot of Byron ownership, really out of pure luck. I had him as the place differential because I didn't think we'd have a whole lot of ownership on him. I think he was around 24%. He won the race. Usually, whoever wins the race is usually bumped up in ownership. We saw it with Michael McDowell a little bit for the road course. We saw it with Christopher Bell. Like, we were talking about Christopher Bell last week. I wasn't, but the industry was talking about Christopher Bell. I think the same thing's going to happen where people are going to be talking up William Byron because he had just won at Homestead. Even though he didn't have the best car, he had a good car, got through the field, but he's not the dominant car. So I'm really on the fence of playing Harvick and Byron, especially because we're probably going to get another competition caution. I imagine we will. I haven't read anything with that. But last week, Bob didn't even say anything on Twitter until it was like Thursday or Friday morning when they were going to have the competition caution. And sometimes NASCAR doesn't even decide until the day of or whatever happens. So especially if we have a competition caution, I'm not a fan of Harvick and Bowman, or not a fan of Harvick and Byron, even though I have Byron rated slightly higher than Harvick just because I think he'll have a better car right off the start. Who I'm really excited for and who I'm gonna have a lot of ownership on, Kyle Larson. Kyle Larson last week, sure, it's Homestead. Larson's gonna run the outside. He's always fast there, but Larson didn't have to run the high side at Homestead to be fast. He was on fire, and he said, even at the road course, he got in sync really quick. It only took him 3 to 4 laps to really get in a rhythm. We saw the same thing at Homestead. He never really fell outside the top 10. Looking at the lap by lap data, which you can find at racesurprise.com, which I would advise you to go to. If we look at Kyle Larson, this is the wrong. Oops, my bad. Here we go. If we look at Kyle Larson, he ran 61% of his laps in the top 5 and 97% of his laps in the top 10. Whereas we saw other guys, we saw Chase Elliott, we saw Truex, we saw Harvick, Logano, Brad, even though he was up front. I mean, we saw a lot of guys swapping positions, falling in and outside of the top 10. Larson was consistent, and this is a guy who hasn't been in a cup car in almost 3/4 of a year with no practice, and he's hopped into Daytona, he's hopped into the road course, and he's hopped into Homestead, and he's been really, really quick. And we'll talk about lineup construction in a second as well. I'm going to be really high on Kyle Larson for $9,400. Maybe he'll be played with Harvick, but I mean, if I'm over the field on Larson, I'm perfectly happy. Same thing with Martin Truex Jr. starting 4th. Truex was another guy who was very fast last week, especially in the later part of the races. Or in the race, obviously he was inside the top 10 for a majority, and he led during some of the race, but he was 2nd, 3rd, 4th most of the race. And this is exactly what I wanted to see off the trailer. And I'm not putting everything into the Homestead race last week, but it's certainly a good thing to see Larson and Truex be that fast right off the bat. Michael McDowell is, I hate to say it, I really, really hate to say it, but he's in play at his price tag. I think, and let's just talk about lineup construction here, pricing, and I think the industry, when they're making lineups, is going to really focus on track history. We saw that last year, and we're going to see it a lot at these 1.5 miles, to where projections, lineup construction, everything like that is based on track history. And as I said, especially last year, the finishing order at the races last year is not representative of who had the fastest cars. So Michael McDowell at where is he at? I just went blank. Michael McDowell at $6,000. I think that could be fine. I don't think he's going to lead laps, but in a situation to where the lineup construction I like is very similar to the winning lineup last week, I don't think I really want to mess around with the 4 and 5K range. My lowest driver in my lineup, I want to be in the 6K range. You know, everybody I like is 6K and above. I don't need to play Ryan Preece. I don't need to play Anthony Alfredo. And I certainly do not want to play the garbage plays at the bottom. I don't want to play the punts. So when I'm building my lineups this week, if I'm not paying up for, Kyle Busch, I'm not paying up for Ryan Blaney, I can get a lot of the guys I like in the 8K. I can get a lot of the guys I like in the 7K, and I can get a lot of the guys I like in the 6K, and I think that's the way lineup construction should go this week, and we'll talk about that. But that's why I have Michael McDowell in play, because it's $6,000. That's actually not horrible. And if they actually have something, I mean, this is very similar to Michael Waltrip's season, like 2003, 2002, 04, when Waltrip was leading, the point standings for like the first 8 races or whatever. Denny Hamlin. I think Hamlin's going to carry some ownership. 9,200, I think we're going to see Harvick. We're going to see a lot of lineups start off with Harvick as their main dominator. And then people are going to try and fit in a second or third dominator, where I would really focus on people like Alex Bowman, people like William Byron, Kyle Larson. I think the majority of people are going to go Harvick, and then they're either going to go Truex or Hamlin, because you can easily fit either Truex at 11-1 into a lineup. You can easily fit Denny Hamlin 9-2 into a lineup. And people like Joey Logano, people like that, I mean, those guys are going to be, the 1, 2, 3 big dominators or big projected lap leaders here. So if that's the case, and I don't think Harvick or Denny Hamlin are going to have the fastest cars this week, that's why I have them rated as C's, I don't think I'm really going to get to them. Sorry about that. Excuse me. Hold on a minute. I got to get a drink of water. All right. Sorry about that. Kurt Busch was really, really fast off the trailer, and he's getting a lot out of this car. Sure, he won at Las Vegas in the fall. That was because of a late race restart. He was going to be run down by Matt DiBenedetto if there was another lap, and then he was going to be run down by the other fast cars who were stuck in the pack, who took 4 tires. I mean, the late race caution is what gave Kurt Busch the win. However, looking at how he's been running this year off the trailer has been amazing. If you look at the tracks very similar to here, I like Kurt Busch a lot. And especially at his price, I mean, Kurt Busch he's just mispriced. $8,100 for a guy that can easily finish top 5 is ridiculous. Chase Elliott obviously didn't perform nearly as well as I expected him to do last week, but we're at another track where I think Elliott should do extremely well. We just have to wait and see. All the other Hendrick cars were extremely fast. Chase really was the only guy who was off pace, and even when he was off pace, he wasn't just absolutely horrible. And at 10.6, he's not the most expensive guy. So starting 8th in a situation to where I think people might be a bit hesitant to play Elliott, I like. Now, we're probably to my favorite play. He was 14% owned last week in the 11 or whatever it was. I think we have a $15 GPP this week. But he was 15% owned last week. And sure, I saw rumblings about, Bowman's my favorite play. Bowman's my favorite play here, there. I liked him a lot. But I thought he would carry way more ownership. Now, I don't know if more people are going to talk about Bowman. I don't know what his ownership is going to be this week. But he's very similar he's a bit more expensive. He went from 8,300 to 8,800, starting at, 4 places higher than last week. There might be a slight ownership percentage here, but I absolutely love Bowman here. Bowman has been really, really quick at all the races that I'm looking at here. Across the board, basically a top 5 car. Absolutely love it. Same thing with Byron. If anything, Hendrick is looking amazing right now. I know you're thinking, should I stack Hendrick? If you get to those drivers, you get to them. I wouldn't go out of my way to stack Hendrick, but I'm certainly not going to be opposed to it if that is how you go in your lineups. But I love Bowman this week. Too cheap. One of the fastest cars. I would actually have Bowman and Byron as higher favorites to lead laps than Harvick or Denny Hamlin right now. That's just how I'm looking at it. Brad Keselowski, I think we're going to see chalk on Brad Keselowski because sure, he's 10-3, but if you're looking at his track history, which is what you really got to be aware of right now, is in determining ownership. Like I said, track history is going to determine a lot. Previous track history here is 13th, 7th, 3rd, 2nd, 1st, 6th. That's going to scream out on people making lineups, people talking about him. That's going to make him look extremely well. He's starting 10th. I'd much rather go to Keselowski over Harvick. I'd much rather go to Keselowski over Hamlin. But even with that, I don't think you need to go to Keselowski. Reddick, kind of just depends. Reddick seems like a guy that I'm going to get to in lineups just because, I kind of end up there at $7,900. I think there's better plays in his range. I certainly don't hate it. I actually like his teammate Austin Dillon a bit more. Dillon is a bit cheaper than him, 300 even, or 300 less. But if I'm building a very balanced lineup where 6K is my lowest driver, I'm going to be building a lot with 7K guys. I'm going to be building a lot with 8K guys. I imagine I'm going to have lineups with Tyler Reddick and Austin Dillon together, just because that's kind of the pool I'm working with. Ryan Newman, I guess No Neck Newman heard me because that sumbitch made an optimal lineup last week, or at least the winning lineup. I mean, Roush looked way better. I got to see more. I'm hesitant on Newman. I think he's going to go back to his 22nd last car in the lead lap or first car lap down ways, and we're going to see extremely long runs here. And then, like I said, we're either going to see this race turn to a fuel mileage race or a yellow at the end of the race. Right now, I can't project Newman to get another top 10. I can't project him to even get a top 15. I just can't do it right now. Kyle Busch, too expensive. Absolutely wild. I don't understand this price at all. I'm not a fan of Kyle Busch this week at all. Joey Logano, probably going to be chalky. As I said, he has great track history here. So when people are looking at his history, they're going to see 14th, 1st, 9th, 1st, 4th, and 7th. And if you look at the races that he's won, he has won the spring race twice in the last 3 years. So there's a good chance we're going to see a lot of ownership on Joey Logano. Probably going to go... People start making lineups, and now that I'm opening the pool, because I'm going through more of the drivers here, we're going to probably see people go Harvick, Joey Logano, Harvick, Denny Hamlin, Harvick, Brad Keselowski, Harvick, Logano, maybe back to Denny Hamlin or something along that line, or Chase Elliott, Harvick, Elliott, Logano. And because of that, I don't want to play Harvick once again. I don't mind Logano. His price is a bit concerning. 10,000 is easily going to fit in lineups when you play Harvick and Logano, which I think people are going to do. It leaves you $7,500 on the table to make, or $7,500 on average left to make lineups. So I think that's going to be a very popular build. I hate Harvick. The more I talk about him, the more I look at him in lineups. I just don't like it, and I don't like how that build goes. But I like Logano. I like Bell starting 16th. This is a situation to where I like him. I know he finished 20th last week. But Homestead's a tough racetrack, and I doubt we're going to see people talking about Christopher Bell like they did last week. I like Christopher Bell. Granted, I have him, looking at anywhere from 19th to 16th, but that's worst case scenario. Really, all we have is worst case scenario to go off of this year in this car at these 1.5 miles and stuff. But if the Joe Gibbs cars are actually good and they can actually roll off all right, Christopher Bell's going to be fighting for a top 10. I probably need to change that. Probably give him 8th as a ceiling there. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., in terms of where lineups are going to go, $6,800. I don't mind that at all. Don't mind it. Stenhouse was actually very competitive, more competitive than what I thought he was going to be last week. Obviously, he started 15th, finished 13th, but throughout the race, he didn't really drop out of that range. You know, Stenhouse wasn't exactly terrible. Started 11th, and right off the bat, up into the competition caution, he was 5th. Stayed inside the top 10 up until the end of stage 1. You know, fell back at the start of stage 2 when he was in 20th, kind of got stuck. You know, running 20th around there, and then we had stage number 3 come around. He was still in 20th, kind of riding around, and then when it really mattered in stage 3, after they had worked on the car, after he was coming down pit road, he came down pit road a lot. Not a lot of people reported that, but Stenhouse was coming down pit road quite a bit when he was running in the 20s under yellow to try and get that car fixed, and then he was able to drive through the field up to 13th. So, you know, started the end of stage 3, you know, around 16th, and actually, let's see, lap 168, he's in 25th. We had another yellow on lap 201. By that time, he was in 17th, and then they went green again on lap 208. And at the end of the race, at 208, he was 16th, and then he was 13th at the end of 267. Long-winded answer to saying that Stenhouse is better than we're giving him credit for, and at his price range, and if I'm building lineups that don't dive down into the 5K range, I'm going to probably end up with a lot of Stenhouse. Chris Buescher, as we see the green little symbol right here, too cheap. There is real concern here at $6,400 that people are going to overreact and see Chris Buescher, who led at the start of the race last week, starting 18th, and they're like, well, I got to play Chris Buescher again. So if that's the case, if there's a lot of rumbling around him, you can't tell me that Stenhouse is not the exact same play for less ownership. Straight up, head-to-head, who do you think does better on a weekly basis? It's going to be Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. is $6,800. Chris Buescher is $6,400. I would much rather pay that extra $400 and play Ricky Stenhouse Jr. That's not even talking about Cole Custer, who is literally in between them in pricing. So Ryan Preece, absolutely no, I'm not playing him at all. I just realized I didn't finish the DNF factor, but I finished it for the people that didn't matter. I can't believe I didn't finish that. Doesn't really matter, really. This sheet is just for video references only, or see visualization only. Cole Custer, $6,500, too cheap yet again. I think he's going to be chalk. I would much rather play Cole Custer over Chris Buescher. Had an amazing car last week, was one of the best Stewart-Haas cars, just blew a tire towards the end of the race and lost where he was running. And where did he finish? 23rd? Yeah, he finished 23rd. Unbelievable. Blew a tire when he was running 8th. You know, I love Cole Custer here. Yet again, in that 6K range that I like, $6,500, I'm fine with. Ross Chastain is absolutely horrible, absolutely atrocious. He sucks. I mean, he's bad. $7,300 is an insult. Absolutely disgusting. Just don't like it at all. Daniel Suarez, one thing we were looking at last week, one thing that we need to get clarification on is if this car is a real car, and it is a real car. The issue here comes from now that we know, he's a 20th place car. If he runs very well, he's going to squeeze in the top 15. If that's the case, does everybody else see that now? We are running a very thin line here. Suarez is $6,100. Last week it came down to Suarez, Alfredo, and LaJoie as a value play. I was very direct on the fact that I was going to be very heavy on Suarez, which I was, and his ownership was way lower than I thought it would be. I mean, between those guys, it was lower than I thought all three of them would be, but Suarez is by far the better car in this range out of, you have Michael McDowell, you have Preece, Alfredo, LaJoie, and Buescher around his price range. Suarez is by far and wide the best car in this price range. At $6,100, I'm going to have a lot of Suarez once again because I think he can crack into the top 15 at this race. Now, do people know that? I think Suarez should be a chalk play. He should be a very safe play. but the ownership last week didn't represent the upside that this car had. The wave is going to come. We're going to see Suarez get bumped up in price. We're going to see ownership jump on Suarez, and we're at a point to where it's either going to be this week or next week when people are like, well, I need to play the Trackhouse car. I need to play Daniel Suarez. I'm going to keep playing him up until his price goes up until his ownership goes up. I don't see him getting anywhere over 30%, maybe 25, give him around 22. That's where I think Suarez comes in. Maybe 1 out of every 5 lineups comes in, because I think we're going to have a lot of guys paying up for 10K drivers and 9K drivers. And Suarez, yeah, sure, he looks good, but I think a lot of lineup generators and stuff is going to push people to the 5K range. It's going to push people to possibly even Cody Ware at the very bottom. And good God Almighty. And, Joey Gaze as well. So I like Suarez. I think he's far too cheap. He's one of my favorite value plays this week. And I'm probably going to have a lot of ownership on him. Looking at Bubba Wallace in the 5th Joe Gibbs car. We got to talk about him getting fired again. I'm telling you, it's going to happen. It's going to happen. And this is, we're going to see the downfall of a man. Because Bubba went in, I'm going to win the 500. I need to win the 500. Didn't work out. I need to do well at the road course. Didn't work out. Okay, well, I have one of the best cars off the trailer at Homestead, and it's the same old, same old. It's the same old situation. It's the same thing as it was last week, or as it was last year. And I know Bubba is not going to be happy with how he's running. Jordan, I'm telling you, he's talking to him, being like, hey, Bubba, I told you when I was coming on, we're not running the back. You are not racing for the wins. What are you doing? You're going to get fired because I like winners. I think he finishes 18th to 14th. At his price, $7,000, I think there's going to be better value out there. And, just for Bubba's career, that's not going to get it done, man, because this team wants a top 5 contender, and that's just not going to happen. So that's very sad. Chase Briscoe struggled in this car way more than we thought he would. I think he gets better this week. Not my favorite play, because obviously he struggled, and he got saved by, I forgot what yellow it was. He got saved by yellows at some point, because if you look at his lap data, if you look at where he was running, and I remember paying attention to this in the race, Garrett Smithley was ahead of Chase Briscoe at some point. I know he finished way better than he was running. So Briscoe started 30th, 28th, 29th, 29th. He only got up to 25th by the competition caution on lap 26. So that's like, okay, he's not very comfortable in these cars. And then he started right after the competition caution, 30th. At the end of stage 1, he got up to 26th. And so, this is a Stewart-Haas car, a car that is capable of running in the top 15, struggling with this driver. I don't think he liked this package at all. Starting stage we had a yellow, and then we had the end of stage 1. And so, starting stage 2, he started 25th, fell back to 31st, where Garrett Smithley was running ahead of Chase Briscoe. Let's see, we had pits. He finishes stage 2 in 30th. Absolutely poor. So he goes from 30th to 22nd from lap 168 to lap 202. We have a yellow. He's in 22nd right there. And then, really, that yellow helped save Briscoe, because I don't think he would have driven up to... Where he finished? 18th? I don't think he would have driven up to 18th without that caution. He ended up finishing way better than he ran. And he did not have the 18th best car. Where was he? He's ranked, 28th best car. That's horrible. Maybe that's Stewart-Haas getting better as the night got cold, as we saw Harvick getting better later in the night when the track changed. Maybe that was this type of setup they had. But right now, Chase Briscoe, that was disappointing. I'm kind of hesitant to hop back on Chase Briscoe again, even with his, cheap price tag of $7,400. I'm concerned that Briscoe struggles a bit more. He will be a top 15 driver. Give him a month, he'll be competing for top 10s. But second race with no practice in a package that he does not like, in a package that I can already tell he is not comfortable with because it's not what the Xfinity Series is like, and he wasn't even that good in the Xfinity Series either. I think that aero push is going to be really rough on him. Justin Haley, obviously no. Ryan Blaney has been absolutely horrible. And I mean, look at where he was running when he got wrecked by Erik Jones, clearing himself. Erik Jones and Ryan Blaney, they were running 16th and 17th at the time of the caution. I think that's where Ryan Blaney's going to run right now. He needs practice. He needs to get to a newer paved track. He tends to do better at those tracks versus these older surfaces. And even with that, he still struggled last year. But I don't see Blaney just working. I don't see it this week. 10-8 on a guy who should be extremely chalky, who I think a lot of people are going to go with. Just based on track history, as we look at his track history, 7th, 11th, 5th, 22nd, 5th, 5th. That seems, I mean, I don't like that at all. I don't like Blaney, and I don't like Harvick probably the most out of anybody. And Kyle Busch, but he shouldn't be in your player pool either. I don't like that play. Anthony Alfredo, I'm not going to go there. Car, it was the exact same car as John Hunter, man. Same exact thing. I'll probably go back to Erik Jones. Don't mind him. I'm just Eric. You know what? Eric would be a B. I'm okay with that. Erik Jones will probably be a B. He'll probably be the place differential guy I build around this week. 8,600. I don't mind that. He wasn't as fast as we wanted him to be last week. Obviously, he wrecked, but he should get back to top 15 contention pretty easily. I don't mind that at his price tag. I'm certainly not going to pay $9 for him. I'm glad he wasn't that expensive. Erik Jones. I mean, I don't know why people played Erik Jones last week. I didn't see it. I don't see it again. I think Erik Jones runs right at the edge of the top 20. Maybe he works himself to, I mean, we'll be generous and give him a ceiling of 18th, but I think that's where it is. I think that's where he's going to run. Erik Jones screams out to me, though, as a play that'll work if we have a late race yellow. Because if we have a late race yellow and Eric's been running 20th all day, he screams as a guy who stays out on old tires, or he screams as a guy who takes 2 tires at the end. So, am I even going to wait a minute? Am I even going to really dive into that? I can't. I mean, dude, I can't project who's gonna stay out on old tires at a late race yellow. That's the only situation I see Erik Jones working in. I don't see him having good track speed. I see him being at the tail end of the lead lap and fighting for the lucky dog throughout this entire race. That's just how it is. Matt DiBenedetto has fallen off a freaking cliff. I think people are going to go back to the well. $9,000 for Matt DiBenedetto, who has just been absolutely horrible. Horrible is an understatement. Not just this year, but I mean, good Lord, he's not a top 5 driver. He's not a top 10 driver. He'll get up to 15th. He'll get up to 19th, 13th, somewhere around there. But look at his track history. 2nd and 2nd. That's the only reason we're talking about Matt DiBenedetto. That's the only reason people are going to play Matt DiBenedetto is because, he's finished 2nd. This could be the place Matt gets his win. And I don't think it is. And so I am not focusing on DiBenedetto here either. I'm not punting this week. I'm not punting at all. BJ McLeod, real quick, obviously he had a steering pump issue. He went to the garage. They had to put a belt on, and he came right back out. I cannot tell where his laps are in comparison to other cars, because that requires me really paying attention to what lap he came back out on and where he was at. I was trying to look at where he was in terms of speed, but obviously because he was 3 to 4 laps down, I kind of have to offset where he is and try and pinpoint where the other guys are around him. That's a big pain in the ass to do. I'll probably do that at some point tomorrow, just not right now because that'll take too much time. I think BJ McLeod does have probably the best backmarker car, but I'm not playing BJ McLeod at 5,100. 46, awesome. I'm not playing $5,000. I'm not paying $5,000 for a punt that I don't see getting really any farther than 29th. The reason we're going to talk about Joey Gaze is because Joey Gaze, it's the Joey Gaze show. It's the same situation as BJ was last week. because I think McLeod was 4% owned. Let me look right fast. And I think that's optimizers and lineup constructions just kind of forcing them in, because everybody's paying up for high guys, and when you're using all your salary, you know, it just kind of forces whoever the cheapest guy is that could possibly work. So let me look at BJ McLeod's ownership. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, BJ was 4% owned, 4.6% owned, and Chris Buescher was 4.3% owned. Oh my gosh, dude. The optimizers put BJ in more than Chris Buescher. That's really interesting. That 4% really surprised me. There's no reason that play should have been over 2% at all. I think we see a very similar situation where I think Joey Gaze brings in around 3.5 to 4.2% ownership. And I think that's a bear trap. That's a trap. That's a bear trap. If you get in it, it's going to bring your lineup down. Even if you get out of it, you're going to have a messed up shin for the rest of your life, and it's just not worth it. So, once again, I'm primarily focusing on drivers 6K and above. I don't want to go under $6,000 in any of my lineups for the cheapest guy. So maybe if you're into rules for Fantasy Cruncher or whatever you're working with, maybe make that a rule. Make the cheapest guy, over $6,000 or whatever. But that's how I'm going to look at it. I love Kyle Larson this week. Kyle Larson and Alex Bowman are probably my favorite plays. And if you want the picks, those are the 2 picks. I mean, those guys are probably my favorite guys. And I'm taking a stand there. It could not work, might not work, but those are the guys that I'm liking the most this week. So thank you guys for watching. Thank you for sticking with me here as I ranted for almost an hour. So thank you guys. Thank you for everybody watching our live streams. We're going to have 3 more this week, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Sunday, probably 10 a.m. again, Race for the Prize and I. So please come in, check that out, ask us questions. We're here to help you guys out. And just thank you for the support. It's been really, really overwhelming and pretty awesome to see how many people are watching my content this year, how many people I'm helping, and it makes me very happy. So thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thank you. We'll see you then.